Well, here we are. We are at the end of our time together and Holy Week. And we've traveled a long ways in a short amount of time and covered some really tough topics together. And the part that I really love about Holy Week is that it does illuminate issues about power and a path towards healthier power in such a strong and challenging and also tangible way. And so as we look back, we started with just entering in to being open with Ash Wednesday, right-sizing ourselves. We looked at how power is not like pie and it's fluid and flexible and exists on a spectrum. And then we allowed new truths to be revealed about our history, about our place in history, about some personal things related to power. And then we allowed ourselves to lament in so many different ways, whatever that looks like, but to be willing to engage with some of those breaking out of denial patterns that help us. Then we looked at repentance and repenting, moving away from things and moving towards something new. And that would be uncomfortable, but is so needed and so necessary when it comes to disrupting power. And then we focused on disrupting power and being people that told the truth and could disrupt in our different ways the existing power systems. And then last week, we focused on cultivating healthy power, which doesn't come in a rush, but can come with certain principles of really cultivating width and wisdom and webs and more healthy living systems creatively. This week is really just bringing it all together and just illuminating the Jesus story and finding the pieces that we need to remember as we travel, wrap up Lent and move into the road towards Easter Sunday. And so the biggest part that I want to start with is just that Palm Sunday and Kings is probably a topic that I could talk about every day and do in different ways because we are addicted to a certain kind of king. And that's what we're seeing right now, just in culture. This is across politics, but in celebrities and certain kind of leaders who lead big organizations. There is a draw towards kings. And we know if we read the book of Kings, what happens with most kings. And so it's embedded in us, but yet we search for it. And Jesus was always a different kind of king. And it always confounded people, and it continues to confound people, and we continue to mix it up. But the example to me is the best is just that how people acted on Palm Sunday was clearly very different from where things ended up just a few short days later. And that is how quick crowds can turn when we don't get what we want, how we want it. And I think the piece that is so powerful about the example of Jesus coming in on a donkey with that much pomp and circumstance and excitement, and then realizing as Jesus embodied, really, really disrupting everybody's idea of how this was going to be, ending up dying on a cross just a few short days later, and the majority of people abandoning him, is the greatest example of our addiction to a certain kind of power instead of Jesus-centered power, which is the path of the cross and the path of humility and the path of other things that he did during this week. And so one of the things that really sticks out to me is when he comes in, one of the first acts that he does is go to the temple and to the place that was the system that was most rigged against people who were poor, who were vulnerable, who were oppressed, who were outcasts, who were anything other than the separated religious people and under the bottom. And he went there to the people who were creating that system and flipped over the tables. And that is symbolic. And I really believe it's such a message for us and why we're so behind as Christians in this conversation, unfortunately. And I know so many of us are so disheartened by what Christian has come to mean, and that adopting to that worldly king kind of power over people, hierarchical, limiting, oppressive, versus the liberating, equitable ways of Jesus that are embodied in the Beatitudes. And so that healthy anger is a good emotion. And it helps us really, really see how crucial it is for us to not sit by and let people claim our faith, and to not let people stand by while our brothers and sisters are being oppressed. And so turning over tables starts. Love the story related to Lazarus and the unbinding that Jesus calls his friends to do, that even though Jesus raises him, there's a call in community and that we need each other. And I think this is so strongly illuminated this week and sometimes gets overlooked. The other piece that I really love is on Maundy Thursday, and that is the giving and receiving that happens in John 13 when Jesus is washing his disciples' feet, which was so counterintuitive. It didn't make any sense. He was their teacher. And he's like, no, this is what it looks like. And I don't know if you're like me, but having someone wash my feet is far, 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 far harder than washing someone else's feet. I can wash feet all day long, but to have people wash my feet is a different story. And has happened before. Multiple times I've had people wash my feet, and it's so vulnerable. And it's the example. That's this tangible thing that I think we can hold on to, is that if we are always in the giving, we're always in the power seat, we're always in control, we are not embodying the ways of Jesus. Jesus washed feet and allowed his feet to be washed. And so giving and receiving is such a core principle in this week. Then we move to Good Friday and the reality of the story of being betrayed by people closest to him, by carrying the cross to death, of offering forgiveness in that moment, of really all the hopes of the previous few days dashed, the reality of this king that was going to save them now being crucified in the way of common criminals. And the story of this, I think, is so hard and harsh, and also so revealing and illuminating. I love the words of Cheryl Lowry. She is a chaplain in prisons in Australia. And I'm going to read the poem that is in this chapter, because I think it just embodies so well, illuminating the power of Holy Week and our confoundness that we sometimes live with. It's called God, Who Are You? What was it about Jesus that was so confusing for governments and for ordinary people? Pilate couldn't make sense of Jesus, and half the time we can't either. We want a God who comes in might and power to take all before him, and yet we get Jesus, unmistakably human and vulnerable, troublemaker, peace lover, politically subversive, always on the side of love, not power, human, even to the point of death. We keep asking the question, God, who are you? In the hope we'll get a different answer. And God just keeps coming back with this one. And so, Good Friday, always Jesus on the side of love. And then we have Holy Saturday. And Holy Saturday is a place to honor the now and the not yet. And that place of grief that we talked about and lament earlier, and how hard it is to hold that and to know that some of the seeds we're planting now in disrupting power, we're not going to see the fruit of that or what grows, but we know that we must. And to hold on in the middle of not knowing the outcomes. And we are so focused on quick and fast and dirty and clear. And Holy Saturday teaches us so much about living in the now and the not yet, even though it's such a small piece of the scriptures. In principle, just remembering what people were experiencing this Saturday after Jesus was crucified. And then we have Easter Sunday. And Easter Sunday is the embodiment of everything, in that it's not the end of the story. And we have out of the deepest places of pain and reality, we have new life and we have new hope, and we have Jesus in the flesh in a different way. And so I think the piece for us as we wrap up and consider our place in the story of power is to recognize that Jesus is always Eastering us. In the words of Walter Brueggemann, whose poem I refer to in this chapter, and it's much longer and it's really worth reading, is that we can be Eastered and we can Easter. And that part of that is awakening and resurrecting and renewing and rekindling and rebuilding and remaking and springing into life. Those are all words that are synonymous with resurrection, and that is what is needed in this world, is honoring the resurrection power of Jesus in this story, and that we can embody the ways of Jesus in our unique ways by bringing resurrection into the places that desperately need it. And so, Jesus, resurrection is not about out of comfort. It's not about the status quo. It's always about disruption. And the disruptive story is that they all thought he was going to be dead on Friday, and Sunday comes, and it's a totally different story.